The story starts in a classroom at school. It's been a week since high school started. Our MC placed a domino on the floor. He had founded a domino club, but was the only member in the club so far. Thinking to himself, Nitanda admitted it wasn't like he was trying to act aloof or cool. It was just that no one had signed up to join. Nitanda remembered how he had tried talking to some people in his class about the club, but nobody seemed all that interested. All he ever got in return were polite and distant responses that felt like formalities. For a niche hobby like dominoes to catch on, Nitanda thought, it would probably take something like a manga featuring a bunch of cute girls casually playing with them. He muttered that they would just have to wait for such a manga to appear. Nitanda then thought jokingly that maybe he should draw it himself. At that moment, someone entered the room. Nitanda was shocked as a girl walked towards him and said nothing further. She quickly came up beside him, saying "Konnichiwa," jolting him. Nitanda was caught off guard. When they both sat on the floor, Nitanda hit the dominoes and they began to fall. She watched with sparkling curiosity, saying they were falling so gracefully, while Nitanda looked completely dejected. As he stood behind her, Nitanda thought to himself that he had been planning to finish the setup with a satisfying topple. Machino, still bright and composed, offered him a chiqua snack as an apology. Nitanda, even more flustered, waved his hands repeatedly and politely refused, saying no and thank you. He then asked aloud what "konchiqua" was even supposed to mean, wondering if it was some kind of greeting that was trending in the class without his knowing. The two sat in silence, Machino hugging her knees, while Nitanda remained tense, his face serious. Internally, Nitanda thought that she had started joking around the moment she showed up, and he had ended up snapping back without thinking. He thought, "Aw shoot," and felt regret for his reaction. He glanced at Machino, thinking that she was probably wondering what was wrong with him. Though Nitanda admitted to himself that such a line should truly have been his own. Machino had smiled brightly, her cheeks blushing as she pressed her hands to her face, radiating a cute and sparkling air. Then she admitted without embarrassment that she didn't think she left a strong impression in terms of looks, claiming it was simply part of her character setup. Nitanda had disagreed politely, saying that he thought she had more than enough of a presence. Machino had leaned in with a curious hum, her face smug and close to his face, asking in a slightly teasing tone if he knew who she was. He replied awkwardly, saying they were in the same class, and added that Machino was pretty popular. Clearly flustered, Nitanda's cheeks turned red, and sweat appeared on his face. Nitanda reflected that Machino truly was an elite from the swim team, with a record of making it to the prefectural tournament back in middle school. To him, she was the kind of cheerful girl who could be the main character, or the heroine if this were a manga. While Nitanda considered her the total opposite of himself, bright and outgoing, Machino said she knew him too, then called out his name as the guy who got demoted to the second string. This made Nitanda tense up, and he thought unhappily about how that was right after the entrance ceremony during their very first homeroom. When the teacher called on him, saying it was Nitanda-kun's turn, he thought to himself that this moment marked the first black mark of his high school life. As his turn arrived, he responded yes, acknowledging that it was finally there. He mentally prepared himself, thinking that it was his turn at last. His mind was set on going for a chill, funny kind of character. He stood up and introduced himself, saying, "I'm Nitanda." He added that people always said he looked like an archer who was part of the starting lineup, but ended up getting dropped to the second string, back in middle school. After his introduction, the class fell into an awkward silence. Nitanda, stunned and sweating, managed to add "nice to meet you." Machino was seen chuckling with her eyes closed and a hand over her mouth, showing her amusement while blushing. She confessed that even just remembering Nitanda's self-introduction, she couldn't help but laugh. Nitanda, appearing stiff and annoyed while sweating and staring at her, asked if she wasn't laughing a bit too hard, but inside, he knew it was true. Nitanda recalled gritting his teeth in distress, thinking that just remembering it was so painful, it made him grit his teeth. He realized that the real reason no one wanted to join the Domino Club wasn't because of the dominoes themselves, but because he had, against his will, messed up his self-introduction and, as a result, became the guy who failed his high school debut. Now he was seen as a mildly awkward person, someone everyone tried not to interact with. Smiling sweetly, Machino replied that he was probably aiming to be a funny guy, but his attempt had fallen flat. Nitanda then made a comment and stood beside her, looking a bit exasperated but resigned, while Machino continued smiling. Nitanda told Machino that her analysis was impressive, but asked if she could go easier on him. Machino leaned down close to Nitanda, asking if he was thinking that this girl had just shown up out of nowhere, started cracking jokes and teasing him, but was kinda cute. Nitanda, setting aside that overly self-conscious thought, asked what exactly Machino had come there for anyway. Machino put a finger to her lips, saying, and repeated his question about what she had come there for, as if truly wondering about it. Machino then said she guessed it was maybe for a tour. Nitanda, shown in chibi form alongside Machino, asked if she was interested in dominoes, and Machino replied with another still sounding non-committal. Machino replied with a pun, saying she was interested in it as much as she was in the hut. Nitanda asked if they were talking about pizza now. With perfect comedic timing, her stomach rumbled. He commented on her apparent hunger. She turned away, giggling, and insisted she was just joking. Nitanda, still annoyed, repeated her words with a growl, clearly irritated. With a smile, she said that if he let her check it out, she might end up getting interested in dominoes too, and chuckled. Nitanda repeated the word too in surprise. Then with a soft and sincere expression, Machino leaned toward him and confessed that what she was really interested in was him. Nitanda, stunned, repeated her words as if trying to confirm she really meant him. Nitanda suddenly stood up in shock, wondering if she was really serious, and immediately opened the door. Nitanda peered out, glancing up and down the hall. A passing student jolted in surprise at his tense expression. Nitanda closed the door with a sigh of relief and hoped that there hadn't been anyone around with a phone ready to capture the moment. Machino, slightly turned away, let out an awkward laugh. Nitanda watched her, surprised. Machino laughed heartily, wiping away a tear. She said Nitanda's immediate assumption that it was a prank was priceless. Nitanda blushed, annoyed but embarrassed. He thought Machino was a little troublemaker. Machino grinned mischievously and said Nitanda really was great. Nitanda had said that there were girls who were nice to otakus, but insisted there was no way a sporty girl would be nice to a culture club guy. Machino then puffed her cheeks in indignation and asked what was with that awful stereotype. Machino said there was no such thing as a gal who was nice to otakus. Nitanda, taken aback, asked if that was the part she was objecting to. Nitanda, left alone, looked troubled. He wondered if gals who were nice to otakus weren't real and admitted nothing more out loud. With teary eyes and a soft expression, Machino confessed that she really was interested in Nitanda. Back in the classroom, when pressed to make a self-introduction, a nervous Nitanda stood up at his desk. Machino had laughed back then, thinking that his introduction was genuinely funny. Nitanda, taking in her words, still found it hard to believe that sort of thing would really resonate with sports club people. Machino teased him, saying that was a stereotype, and in truth, girls in sports clubs were 100% otakus. Nitanda claimed that sounded like a surprising statistic, but insisted Machino was just lying. Machino told Nitanda seriously that he really was funny and should be more confident, promising to laugh at anything he said 100% of the time. Nitanda reminded her that piling a big lie on top of another one didn't help. Machino had then turned serious again, saying that when Nitanda made his self-introduction, she noticed some people mumbling that he was cringe, acting as if they were above him, even though they couldn't come up with anything funny themselves. Nitanda thought to himself that so he really had been called cringe. But Machino had continued, addressing Nitanda directly. She told him with a smile that having the guts to totally bomb his self-introduction was 100 times cooler than those people. He was deeply moved. Nitanda, with a wild look, told her to wait and accused her of hiding something suspicious behind her smile. Smiling, she insisted that there was nothing shady going on. That was mean, she said, and then, with a playful teasing smile, asked if when a cute, sporty girl like her flashed him a smile like that, wasn't he supposed to get a little flutter in his heart? Nitanda, smiling, replied that she was still going strong with her overactive self-awareness. Machino, leaning in closer, said, "Okay then, let me ask you this," and asked what kind of girl was his type. making Nitanda blush and sweat. He stammered out the beginning of a word, but Machino, standing thoughtfully with her arms crossed, said that she would guess. She thought it had to be someone with an air of transparency. Nitanda responded with a confused sound. Machino asked him if his type was a delicate, dreamy girl with that radiant, look at my ethereal purity vibe in a straw hat and a white sundress. She then brought up another type of girl, asking about the nose type. Nitanda confusedly asked what this meant, and Machino explained it as a scenario where a guy who was totally indifferent to a girl would have a petal land on her face and then suddenly fall in love. She said that kind of overly poetic vibe was so pretentious. Nitanda, blushing, admitted he might fall in love in such a moment, but complained that the way she described it sounded mocking and smug. One of the girls asked what was wrong. Machino, with a bright smile, pointed out that the cherry blossoms had already mostly fallen, making his poetic moment impossible. Nitanda thought to himself about that smile she did again. Machino-san, he said. He asked her if she ever did that duck call gone wrong kind of laugh in class. Machino said nothing, her face expressionless. But when Nitanda looked confused, she said, "Eh?" Her face then turning red. Looking for an excuse, she said it was getting late. She then said goodbye and headed off to her clubroom as Nitanda watched her leave and thought to himself that he did feel a bit sad that their banter was over. He wondered if Machino had come by just to kill time before her club started, or if she pitied him for bombing his self-introduction. Then, with a surprised face, he turned to her and she addressed him. Machino smiled brightly, her hand on the door, and asked if she could visit again. Nitanda thought of an answer in his head, yaying thank you. Watching her exit the room, Nitanda looked surprised and embarrassed, thinking to himself that he hadn't actually said that out loud. A close-up of Machino's feet showed her leaving, while Nitanda told himself, well, whatever. Nitanda was shown kneeling, gripping his pants tightly, thinking that Machino would be coming again. Machino's face was shown smiling as she turned to leave. Machino turned back to him with a bright smile, saying, "See you." Her cheeks were slightly flushed, and she seemed to shh. As Machino walked away, a cherry blossom petal dragged on her uniform before falling off. Nitanda thought, ah. Noticing the petal on her clothes, Nitanda realized it was a cherry blossom petal. He wondered if perhaps it had been something Machino-san had prepared ahead of time as a joke, waiting for him to play the straight man. He glanced at his hand. He wondered if it was just a coincidence. Nitanda wondered to himself, with his hand on his chest, whether he was supposed to fall in love at that moment. He then saw Machino smiling and walking away. Nitanda reflected that students often stared at their phones for hours on end, thinking that it might be good to just air themselves out sometimes. Nitanda wondered whether Machino-san would show up that day, recalling that she did say, "See you later" and all. Instead of overthinking, Nitanda thought it was best to just start setting up the dominoes. Suddenly, a face had appeared at the door. It was Machino, smiling brightly and unexpectedly. Nitanda had reacted in shock and had said, "What are you doing here?" Stunned, Machino prompted him to take a guess. Nitanda had asked if it was some kind of psycho horror movie reference. Machino had replied no. He then asked if it was a cat stuck in a door, and she told him he was right. She then entered the room, asked how long it took Nitanda to notice her. He asked how long she has been there. Ignoring him, she said that he must be thinking. If she were to come today. Nitanda blushed and with a face completely red and a tense expression admitted just a little. He tried to emphasize it was really just a teeny bit with a hand gesture showing something small. Machino simply smiled at his reaction, saying, hee hee. Suddenly, Machino shifted her expression, becoming serious and with narrowed eyes, and quickly tried to change the subject, pressing her mouth and restarting the conversation with a new focus. She explained with a pouting face, her hands clasped in front of her, that she had a bone to pick with the never-ending video app. Nitanda, thinking that it was a sudden mood swing. Machino noted that lately more kids were filming dance videos in class, waiting for his approval. Nitanda added that everyone wants to film with Machino because she's really popular. Machino said she was fine with it, and honestly liked dancing and doing impressions. Nitanda repeated the word impression in his mind, thinking of Machino with her hands raised above her head, mimicking a fish cake and saying chikuwa while making sound effects. Machino added that not everybody in class was okay with being recorded. She said that the gals are not bad people or anything. It just makes her feel weird. Nintanda told her that he feels the same way. He explained that if it was two people who both understood the risks of digital footprints recording each other and posting it, that was fine. But there were still plenty of people out there who didn't even own smartphones. When such people were dragged into things by unconscious social pressure from people with high communication skills and turned into stepping stones for someone's unintentional need for validation. Nintanda admitted that he wasn't great with that either. Machino told him he was really good at putting things into words, like a master of polite disses. He thought to himself that it wasn't exactly a compliment, but she said with a smile that it actually made her feel a bit better. Nintanda said he was still glad it helped, even if she didn't understand half of it. Machino complimented him. She told he was really mature for his age and doesn't act like he's above others. Slightly embarrassed, he tried to tell her that that's not really true. The girl admitted that Nintanda was honestly a rare breed of introvert otaku. Nintanda was amazed by her direct insult just after lifting him up. He told Machino to stop trying to relate to him like a hairdresser making small talk. Machino told him she was an otaku too because she read manga mentioning that pirate one or whatever. He told her that that's social hell for him. And Machino giggled, thinking about his dry, awkward little laugh in that situation. Machino changed the topic. She asked him to film a short video together. Confused about that, Nintanda questioned why. She tried to convince him and explained that he might hit it up better with his hairdresser if danced and brightened up. Unimpressed, Nintanda told her that that solution is way to party girl coded. Machino, now with even more enthusiasm, told him that he'll be fine, and it's only embarrassing at first, but then he'll get hooked on the thrill. Now, desperate, Machino told him that they weren't going to upload it anyway, and it's just one video. Nintanda still declined. Machino urged him to read the room and get her validation already. Wondering how one could say no after all that build-up, Nintanda, pulling out his phone, told her that he was making dance videos all the time, adding that he's not dancing himself, but the dominoes. He tells her to watch. Slightly interested, she asked to see it. "Whoa," she said, looking astonished. But then hold him, it was so plain. He was stunned. She then said it was like a research presentation for her. Still trying to convince Nintanda, she said that it's important to drive traffic to his channel with short-form content. Nintanda didn't want to be swayed by someone who sounds like a shady video marketing consultant. Machino, out of ideas, looked at him and came closer to him. Completely shocked, he called her name. Machino, now really close, made him blush and sweat. She whispered she'd start the shampoo now, grabbed his head and hair, shaking it slowly. Then she asked him to dance with her in a flirty voice. Nintanda, closing his eyes, completely overwhelmed with the situation, told himself not to give in. Machino told him to move to the next station as they were done with the shampoo. She asked him why he wouldn't dance with her, clearly angry. Nintanda wanted to know why she'd even want to dance. She told him that she was totally an otaku too, and that she reads that pirate manga all the time. Then she adds that dancing is super fun, making Nintanda think that she went from heaven to hell. Nearly resigned, she starts pouting at him cutely and tells him there's no reason and that she just wants to dance with him. Eventually, he gave in. Machino smiled, moving happily. Her skirt spun elegantly with the rhythm. She reached out a hand, her eyes bright and inviting, a smile lighting up her face as she continued to dance with marks of excitement and music notes filling the air. With her fingers pointed, Machino turned to face Nintanda, explaining the choreography with a calm voice while smiling. Nintanda looked stunned, his body tense and his fists clenched. While Machino performed the moves, Nintanda looked at his own hand and tried to follow, but his face showed confusion, indicating he struggled to grasp the steps. As the dance went on, his movements were still clumsy, and he didn't make progress. The camera, filming them both, captured a happy Machino and a confused Nintanda. Nintanda, after the Machino, turned to him with a big smile, asking if it had come out okay. Machino thought to herself that this was what she looked like on video. Watching it, Nintanda commented honestly that she was all smiley like a little kid, but her dancing was super sharp, like a pro. Machino had teased that he was totally expressionless, but admitted it worked and created a cool vibe. She added with a soft blush that this might be her favorite video, and that getting to share the memory together made her really happy. Nitanda told her with a gentle smile that if she had fun, then he was glad he gave in to her request. After that, Machino saved the video to her phone, said goodbye with a beaming face, and headed off toward her club. Later, while sitting alone and staring thoughtfully at his phone, Nitanda reflected that he had never imagined he would end up filming a short video with Machino from class. Remembering that, he thought that since he was already on the topic, he might as well check out some other dance videos. As he scrolled, his face suddenly froze, staring at his phone in stunned silence. Nitanda, still holding his phone, covered his eyes with his arm, feeling tense and embarrassed. He blushed and thought that all the videos he had seen him were of couples. He wondered if Machino had set things up like that on purpose. It had almost been a month since high school started. With no practice and barely knowing his teammates' names, the volleyball tournament ended in the blink of an eye. And with that, the scene shifted to the clubroom, where a boy, Nitanda, was seen holding his phone. He asked a classmate for their thoughts now that the tournament was over. The classmate, with a casual posture, responded by saying that it was a good question, referring to him as Nitanda. He explained that the coach had instructed them to stick to their style of soccer. But the players were confused, questioning if they even had a style. Everyone just had a blank look on their faces the entire time. Nitanda, holding his phone, asked if that meant the classmate was critiquing the school's decision to throw a full-on sports event right after they enrolled. Yagi, with an exasperated yet somewhat amused expression, agreed, questioning why they even needed a soccer tournament when there was already a sports festival in October. Nitanda, sitting across from Yagi, joined in, animatedly asking how much more the school could favor the sports clubs. Nitanda was from his class, and they had started talking after being paired up as the leftover extras in physical education. Nitanda was in the broadcasting club, which had the same cultural club vibe as Yagi's own, and he thought that maybe that was why they clicked. Since his awkward self-introduction at the beginning of the school year, he had tended to stand out in a negative way. However, Nitanda had always spoken to him as if it was never a problem to Yagi. In his mind, that made him unique, both inside and out, and one of his few real friends. Nitanda then changed the subject and asked casually if Yagi had watched the girls' matches too. Yagi admitted that he had. Yagi, with a way too fast and way too creepy vibe, said that Yukite-san from the girls' basketball team was amazing. Nitanda responded with a straight face that he could barely catch what Yagi was saying. Nitanda said she had a cute "I'm small but trying my best" vibe, blushing as he spoke. Yagi then asked if Nitanda knew that when Yukite-san passed the ball, she went "eh." Nitanda replied that he had barely heard it as it was so quiet. Nitanda said the just barely audible part was what made it perfect. One couldn't fake that kind of cute. It was all in the genes. Yagi then turned to Nitanda, blaming he was ignoring him. Nitanda, with a tense expression, mentioned that Machino pretty amazing too. The boy, now shifting awkwardly, mentioned Machino-san. She was known for being cheerful and lively in class, but when it came to events, she displayed a serious jock energy that reminded him of something. Every time he saw her, he thought of it, but before he could say it aloud, Nitanda interrupted. Yagi asked if Nitanda hated hidden canines arranging something. Nitanda replied with confusion, asking what a hidden canine even was. Yagi proceeded to show one himself and told Nitanda it was just a shy little fang. Yagi then imagined a younger version of Machino, cheerful and full of energy, with a bandage on her nose, carrying sports gear under some trees. Yagi, with a chibi face, said that back when she was a kid, she was probably super active, the kind of girl who always had a bandage on her nose. That canine tooth must have grown strong, aiming to be a true sports club heroine, he added with a straight face. Nitanda, with a chibi face, responded that Yagi had literally zero evidence for any of that. Yagi then said that nowadays, Machino looked more like the fair-skinned, delicate type than the typical athletic character, and certain parts of her body. But Nitanda, with a serious face, interrupted sternly and told Yagi not to finish that sentence. Both had serious faces at this point. Yagi asked what was up with him and why he was trying to act like her protective boyfriend. He told him that it's not that, but any second now. At that moment, the scene showed a wide view of both boys sitting in the classroom. They were suddenly looking forward in surprise, Yagi with a neutral face, and Nitanda with a tense one, as Machino appeared in front of them. She was obscured and loomed over them stiffly, saying in a cold voice the kind of guy who called his crush his partner. She added, or the person who calls the person who lectured him master. Nitanda greeted her and told her that they could talk about her weird traits later and asked why she's there. As she tries to explain, Yagi stands up and tells her to wait. She explained that she had come to get Yagi-kun and Nitanda-kun for the post-tournament hangout, but couldn't find them in the classroom. Yagi-kun was still struggling to process the situation, questioning why the heroine from the sports clubs was in a place full of leftover culture club boys. The boys sat silently stunned. Yagi-kun had tried to argue that the volleyball tournament was a celebration for the sports clubs. Nitanda added that they thought culture club types like them didn't need to be there. Machino refuted their logic firmly, saying it wasn't about being in a sports club. Even Benny-chan, who was from the culture club, was coming. Yagi asked if Benny-chan was really coming. Suddenly, Yagi announced with fierce determination that he had no time to waste as the real tournament started. Now making a dramatic exit, the others were left in shock. Machino then turned to Nitanda, calling his name and bumping into his arm. Machino, with closed arms and a serious expression, showed tense anticipation. Nitanda, blushing, admitted that she had indeed been amazing in the basketball match. Machino had replied with a smile, though she admitted with mild frustration that even so, losing still sucked. Nitanda thought to himself that she really did seem upset about it and promised that he would do his best next year so he wouldn't drag everyone down. Machino, folding her arms, had said she was sorry if he had hoped she would reassure him with something like, "That's not true," but warned she was about to give him a no-joke, legit lecture. Reacting in surprise, he had braced himself and said, Machino then indeed gave him a blunt scolding. Nitanda apologized and said next year he would make sure to put some stat points into athleticism. Machino told him that that wasn't the problem. Machino, still looking serious, added that the whole point of holding the tournament right after school started was clearly for fun, to help everyone bond, and said the part he was supposed to put effort into was the after party. Giving in, he said that she was totally right. Machino, with a confident and serious expression, stated that they were the only two people who were thinking, ugh, how much more can they favor the sports clubs? Nitanda's face shifted to shock with a stunned expression, his inner voice reflecting the impact of this realization. The girl stood with arms confidently crossed, a smug, satisfied look on her face, as if relishing the moment. Nitanda, looking slightly anxious yet curious, asked if Machino had heard Yagi's interview from the very beginning. Machino responded with a playful smile and simply urged him to join the after-party. Her casual invitation made Nitanda's face blush. He then agreed with a quiet yeah, and she grabbed his hand. Afterward, in a cute, chippy depiction, Machino dragged him along, announcing it was time to go. Nitanda, flustered, could only react with a startled noise. Just like that, he found himself at a class after-party for the first time in his life. He admitted internally that it was a bit embarrassing and wondered why Machino had held out her hand toward him. The karaoke venue had been booked in advance, and when they arrived, everyone from the class was already there, filling the place with cheerful energy. He didn't really get any closer to anyone besides Nitanda, but honestly, he admitted to himself that that wasn't bad at all. Then Machino had called for everyone to raise their glasses with enthusiasm. The whole group joined her, yelling, "Ready, go," and cheering. Nitanda, confused but smiling, wondered aloud what Kipi meant. Nitanda glanced at Machino, who was seen smiling, and noticed him. So, she pointed at her teeth, making Nitanda blush in realization. Yagi, noticing this, asked him what was going on. He pointed out that it was her canine tooth, referring to the situation earlier.